Thanks for being here, and Romy, Seth, thanks for sitting with me at this fireside chat. I prepared some questions, but we're going to do it in a very, conversational piece. I saw yesterday's presentation, and since it's recorded again, I heard you're growing fast and strong. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. And again, thanks for having us. It's been really wonderful. Maybe it's a good opportunity also to announce that we're actually closing a very nice funding round. We're very happy. We even have 50% subscription, oversubscription, I would say, which is always something good, especially in our business.
A question I have, since people heard it yesterday, but in a nutshell, what are you guys doing?
Great question.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah, right. So essentially, OpenLegacy helps or enables enterprises to go truly digital. And our platform automates and standardizes the generation and creation of digital services, typically in the format of microservices-based API. And we do that without changing anything in the backend or changing any of the backend applications. And what this really gives you, it gives you the ability to move fast, agile, and robust to a microservices architecture at a fraction of the time and cost it will take you with existing solutions we see in the market today.
Why should I rather choose, or why would you be one of the key solutions I should look at?
Definitely. If you look at the current landscape of integration, basically for the last 15, 20 years, since, say, the mid-90s even, basically integration was done the same way. There are better solutions today than there were 15 years ago, but the overall principles stay the same. Service-oriented architectures, ESBs, and that's what you would see in a lot of large organizations. And these were great solutions for 15, 20 years ago, but today's problems are a little bit different. And the question is, are you going to solve today's problem with 15-year-old technologies? The answer might be pretty clear on that, but still that's what a lot of people are doing. And what we're suggesting is basically a new concept for integration, a new way of doing integration that is born for today's needs, born for the age of microservices, born for the age of APIs. And it's not just tacking the last layer of APIs on top of your existing integration stack. It is a completely revamped, rethought approach to integration, which is microservices native, which is much more simple, much more robust, and alleviate a lot of the complexity. And it is based on the latest and greatest technologies and approaches that were not available 15, 20 years ago. So basically, it allows you to solve today's problem with today's tools. So that's basically the big difference between what we're doing and what's out there in the market.
It's a nice pitch, but where's the catch? Or where do you see, those guys here are the ones who will watch us pros, and they're a little bit jaded or cynical sometimes, in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way, because, they always have to explain afterwards, they have to cover their ass. Is it like the silver bullet, or do you have to really explain where you perfectly fit, and where, it's not like you can, just use it for the whole legacy system. Is it specific places?
So I would say, first of all,
departments?
I'm an old mainframe guy. I started from mainframes, and I'm a technical guy, so my initial response to any kind of question would be no, there's no silver bullet, for anything. And that's true. It's not a silver bullet, but it is a unique approach. And I would say, with regard to what's the catch, it is a completely different approach, and it works. We have, the proof, and we have the use cases to prove it. I would say that the biggest catch is when we will show you that it works, will you be able to accept the results? Because that's kind of, I would say, the biggest barrier, is just accepting the fact that you don't have to do it the old way. It's easier said than done, because there are some established ways and established thought patterns around integration. But if we can show you that you can produce an API, a microservice-based API from your mainframe, all the way to the consumable API that you want to put out there, in a matter of a day or two, is that something that you will know what to do with? Because that means that, that 18-month integration infrastructure project that you were planning is, not necessarily something that you need to do. And, a lot of people get cold feet at that stage and say, well, what's happening to my project? I don't need that project anymore. So, I don't want to hear anything else about it. Some people will say, well, what happened to my integration project? I don't need it. I want to hear more about it. And that's kind of the challenge. So it's not a silver bullet. It's not, good for any situation. But to be honest, you don't care about any and all situations. You care about your situation. And that's why our approach is kind of test and learn, or basically our approach is to find a use case, see something that adds value to your business that you need it today or tomorrow, and just show it. I mean, it's always better to see than to believe. So we just show it to you. And usually our pilots are 5 days engagement. The most complex pilot that we've ever done was a 10-day engagement. These are not huge investments on your part. And that's basically the difference. Our money is where our mouth is, and we can showcase the results. But you need to be able to accept those results and know what to do with them.
Of the client, sorry, go and before you lose your thought.
No, it's a good opportunity to kind of. It was a good week for us coming here, so you guys gave us a good luck. Actually, this weekend we were kind of like nervous because we went up into production to a global tier 1 bank, a U.S. global bank, household name, and obviously
you can't name it.
No, I can't name it. I apologize. Hopefully, in a few more months, we'll be able to go public. But I would put it this way: the bank was able to go in less than 5 months or 6 months with several dozen microservices API for a very cumbersome, homegrown, monolithic application a la mainframe style. So to do that in such an environment, such a challenging environment, and create that, deliver that, breaking the monolith, if you will, that's, I think, a great testament. Of course, we have many other clients that are already running in production, but that was kind of...
I mean, going to that client, which hopefully you're going to hear in a few months, but what were the obstacles? Can you remember? Was that easy? Oh, here we are.
Of course, nothing is easy, and probably the sales cycle
like a use case.
Yeah, the sales cycle took some time, and actually, I think it's actually. I asked my dad, what should I say when they keep telling us when we started it, because we didn't get any cent or any mileage from anyone in that perspective, because no one believed it's true. So when they ask us, it's too good to be true, what to answer? So my dad said, say it's too good to be true, but it's true. Test us. So when Gil came last year and said test and learn, we actually endorsed that. So we're really about test and learn, because we know that if we can identify a real use case, a real business story that is relevant to the business, and we'll get the line of business support, we'll get the IT support, and we know we can come and in a matter of days prove everyone wrong, so to speak, or prove the expectation. But as Zev said, the challenge is always about now what do you do with that, now that you have seen that we have met all the success criteria and we have truly blown everything that you have thought we would do, now are we going to go to a commercial agreement? And typically today, because we have multiple clients coming and asking, I would say that we have, I wouldn't say quadruple, but close to that in terms of the amount of engagements we have with clients, and most of them are in the financial services. We are focusing on this vertical because of all the things we talked on the past 2 days. So when we have so many clients now, we are actually very rigid about making sure that we have a very clear success criteria, and we have the endorsement of both the line of business and the IT, because then we can come, and I don't want to promise that we'll do it for everyone in 5 days, but I will give you a last example that just we finished last couple of weeks ago. We came in when the software was pre-installed on the mainframe, and actually we don't install anything in that perspective. It was a minor adapter, but in any case, the point being that everything was ready and set. The servers were set, the certification and stuff, and we got in, and in less than an hour, we generated and provided 2 APIs, microservices-based, running with the full DevOps compatible stack that they wanted to have. And they told us, this takes us 2 months for a single API, and we never get the quality of API like we got on yours. And this was done in less than an hour. So obviously you can understand what the implication now for that business.
Is it, from your experience, once you're in, does business grow within?
Yes,
but
it takes time, because obviously the test and learn, it's not just called test and learn. So obviously clients are Some clients went overboard when we kind of got the success criteria and say, hey, we want unlimited, and of course we're very happy. Some clients say, oh, let's start small, 50 API, 100 API, let's see how that works for that domain, for that business domain. That's what we love actually to do a lot of time, because then it goes very fast. And of course it runs several months in production, they're happy, they can show results to the business, and then they come in and say, oh, we have another system here, we want to do something different, we want to add stuff, and actually we had a very, might be interesting story here. We had a bank, part of a large group in Latin America, that one of their subsidiaries, obviously is thinking more economics and all that stuff, and got a very good proposal from, we talked about Amazon, so actually not from that angle, but Amazon came and said, hey, we have a serverless environment, function as a service. We can help you kind of run your digital services in a function as a service. So you're not going to pay anything. You won't need to provision any application or cloud. So it's going to be very cost effective for a small bank, although it's a part of a group, a large group, but it's a great value proposition. So the client came to us after they already kind of acquired the technology, and they were very happy with the Dockers and all the stuff we gave them, and Zev can elaborate. But they asked us, can you do serverless? And this was kind of a surprise, because we have never heard any bank asking us serverless, let alone cloud is becoming. So serverless is like 2025 or maybe. So it took us about a week to go back to the, we said give us a week, went back to the R&D, and within a week we gave them a server, we added serverless capability into our microservice ecosystem, and the bank is now running in production. For those who would be interested, be happy to share and maybe that reference. And the bank in less than probably 4 or 5 months is now running up in production, running serverless against their mainframe backend, and there's no middleware.
Do you feel like, I mean, me as an amateur, so to speak, your clients, are they more advanced, or is it really deep legacy, you know?
I like that question. I'm sure Zev will. It's a tricky question.
But Challenger Bank, I mean, they're already based on all this stuff.
It's a challenge question because I think in the end of the day, what we do, and sorry for being on the slogan, but it's really about architecting the future without restructuring the past. So it doesn't matter what you have in your systems of records and how advanced you are. You need to get out there and be competitive. So you need the latest and greatest DevOps, microservices, you name it. So no matter where you are, you need to get to that kind of cutting edge technology in order to be competitive. So we do see actually banks like this, like tier 1 global bank, which is of course very advanced. So they came and they told us, this is the microservices ecosystem we want you to play. This is our playbook. Can you do that? I said, okay, sure, no problem. We thought something else, but no problem. Give us your playbook. And for us, it's very easy to adjust because we're an open platform. We are only based on open standards. We're not a black box like other solutions that are typically out there in the market. We're not open source, but it's an open standard that gets you all the degrees of freedom you want to do. So for advanced banks, we might just comply with their, I would say, environment or their playbooks.
Which kind of modern already. Yeah.
And exactly. And for maybe banks that are making their first steps in microservices, although sometimes we come in and they say, oh, we want to do microservices, but that's in 5 years because we are so behind. And we tell them, no, you can go from now where you are, we can get you to microservices. And for them, for some of those that want our, to buy into, so to speak, our ecosystem, we have out of the box kind of, if you will, an opinionated microservices platform, but it's very flexible. So you can swipe and
if you think about this, are you more a technology company? Or we talked about yesterday, or a service company?
No, of course, we are definitely a technology company. You can hear that even if the CEO, sometimes myself, sorry for this third party talking, but gets the talking about technology rather than the business value, I think it's very straightforward. Gil here, my leader for EMEA, will say, keep talking about the TCO and time to market and all of those things. And I think this is great, but we've heard them again and again and again. For me, it really is about, I think the technology really matters in the end of the day, and matters because it can drive business results in that perspective. So we are a software company, a product company. We are not a service provider. We are actually spread now between Latin America, US, Europe, including the Nordics, and now it was a good week for us. We just signed our first large client in Asia Pacific, and we have more coming. So we are expanding.
The word of mouth spreads.
So that, yeah, it spreads, and I would put it this way: that where we don't have footprint, kind of our local offices, we augment it, of course, with our global resellers and integrators like Accenture, Deloitte, HCL, others.
Can you take on new work?
Of course, we are always.
No, we all love that, but
I think it's about what we would prefer. To be honest, it's not just about. We actually got now all the funding we want, and we are very good from a cash flow positive. I can share that also because we are generating significant revenues. So from our perspective, yes, of course, money is important, and my board is keep asking me all the time and what have you. But from my preference is to take clients that are willing to take that journey that Seth talked about. That if we meet those success criteria, will we win your business? And that's more important. So if we see there is the buy-in, we'll probably prefer in many cases the buy-in and make sure we get to production and help the client rather than just make a larger deal in that perspective.
What trends do you see in your space that people should know?
Maybe Zef.
I mean, you will be part of that story, but
yeah, I mean,
I assume.
I think that specifically, I mean, first of all, the question, what is our space? Because if you think about the way that the market is currently segmented, you have the API management segment. And that's a huge segment. That's a segment that goes from the most front end of the front end, the thing that is, API monetization and things that are, marketplaces and things like that. And it goes all the way back to the way you generate the APIs and things of that nature. That's a huge space with very different products and offerings in between. So I think, and that's just one aspect of it, because if you look at the integration market as a whole, you would see, you have your old style ESB systems, you have your iPasses, and you have the API management, as a market. So what we're seeing, I think, as a trend is, first of all, there will be a convergence, I believe, of these three kind of different markets. So ESBs, iPasses, and API management will become kind of the same offering, because it doesn't make sense to separate them. But on another level, the API management market will segment, because generating APIs, managing or governing APIs, monetizing APIs, these are not the same thing. So the integration market as a whole, I think, will see a lot of shifts, a lot of changes. The good thing is that the actual offerings will probably not change that much. Some will be commoditized, some will be cannibalized by others, but the way we see them, the way we segment the market, I think will change quite dramatically. And again, I mean, it will need to eventually fit what the customer, what you guys see as valuable. If you don't see as valuable, a specific way of thinking about the market, then I don't think that's the way people should define it. So I think there's a lot of changes ahead of us in the integration market, but I think that the trifecta still is effective. So it's the how, the what, and the where. So the what is the API. I mean, I think it's a given. The how will be a microservice. That's the way you deliver those APIs. And the where will be the cloud. And this trifecta, I think, will continue to be kind of the ruling trend in the years forward.
Of those clients you won, I mean, not the other ones, because we don't win them all. But once you win a client, you establish a different relationship, and you can ask questions, and they will tell you things they wouldn't have told you before. Have you heard some of those barriers they faced before they were able to I mean, because usually it's not one person who decides. So, and how did they overcome those obstacles? Because most here, if they're interested, or somebody else, they have to think about the same thing,
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
They know the barriers, but, what, I mean, besides of
Sure.
time and money and...
Obviously,
which are good motivations, but
it's like I will let probably Zev follow, but I will start. I would say it's like the conundrum that it's like a cycle. It's everyone is afraid at first that you're a young company and how can you do something that all the large and by the way we are all ex IBM, Software AG, HP, so we've been on the status quo, and we kind of took the journey several years ago to kind of change the status quo. So I think the early days, at least as a young company, definitely we had those challenges of disbelief, and until we get to the pilots and prove it. But even then, sometimes we proved it. But then again, I would say the barrier to take kind of a so-called a bet on a young technology.
Which doesn't have a strong brand yet.
Absolutely.
I mean, a strong brand, but not that known yet.
Exactly. So what happened to us, to be totally honest, to be truly candid in our first clients in that perspective was that, yeah, they were surprised on the pilot and stuff. And they said, okay, all right, we'll put it on the back burner. They said, no, we're going to do it how we know. We're going to take the ESB. We're going to do the 8 month for a single service and what have you. And what happened eventually that those clients, after a year, after 6 months, they came back to us and say, we're stuck or we failed. Or someone said, we have no other alternative but to do it your way. And then when we did it, and then we asked, so now everything you're going to do our way? He said, no, here we still can do it the 8 month stuff, although we can do it your stuff in an hour. But the point being, those were the early days.
When you see your company in the next 12 to 24 months?
So I would put it this way, that we are planning to grow. We have doubled, I think, our team over the past year, mostly in the sales channel, customer success, all of those things. Again, if you think about it, we really have around the sun in that perspective support and location. So our life is really interesting. But I would say we definitely want to continue that and both invest in the technology because we're a technology company. So we want to simplify stuff and make it sometimes more friendly to some of the, although our software is used by developers in the end of the day, but
that's ones you have to win over as well.
Exactly. Although typically, I think what really wins is the simplicity, automation, standardization, and business benefits. But of course, we have a lot of communities that we need to touch, and we want to make it easier for them. Although I would say that the funny thing is we do have sometimes developers that are either from the back end or from a different, not on the Java, and they still can do it very wonderful and sometimes just very easy, very straightforward. So you don't have to be a developer per se or a Java developer to get there, but we do want to make it easier, so that's one thing. But obviously growing
and
more.
also expansion.
Definitely expansion.
Which markets are the most interesting? And then after that
we're in Europe, so I would say Europe, but I would put it this way. We are truly a global company in that perspective, and our management team is actually very diversified. It's truly global from multiple nationalities, so we really like diversity in that perspective. But I would say that our R&D is in Israel in that perspective, although our teams and our headquarters are spread in North America, which obviously is a strong market for us, but given the proximity that we are very close in terms of an R&D perspective, we really like the European market. It's also 3-4 hours flights. In that perspective, we can further support our partners. So I would be very, I would say probably the European market for us for the next year or two is where we see a lot of growth. But again, we're seeing growth coming from the Americas.
As you said, yeah.
And APAC.
I think we take the opportunity because I mean, the right people in here to allow those gentlemen and ladies to ask some questions. Since it's recorded, it's your moment of stardom. No, but please ask us some questions, and I will ask Daniel because I like Daniel, and he has always smart questions. And even answers I don't understand, which makes him even smarter.
You said you're going to bring Daniel, but I didn't know which Daniel. And
you will find out very soon.
And now I realize I should have said.
But please, right after, think about questions because that's a great moment for us.
Okay. The truth comes normally about 2 or 3 years later. You know, creating a service that's quickly done, but after 2 or 3 years, a second, a third, a fourth service comes. The first service appears in a new version. And are you bringing along a method or a set of techniques? If a company has a known domain model, are you adopting this domain model, or are you bringing a reference architecture into the game? And how do you do education for these companies? Because, you know, when you begin to version services, that's sometimes a new world for these companies.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And first of all, I mean, that's why I was saying that you talked about the 3 years, and that's true. And our longest running customers are running it for, I think, 4.5 years now. So we've kind of encountered that issue. And the best way, you know, to explain it, I mean, the way that our software works is we're not trying to be smart about it. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel and then have all of these proprietary technologies that at the end of the day, 3 years from now, are going to be new legacy. Quite the opposite. The way we do it is that we spend all of our IP and our knowledge and what we do on the design time. So what you actually run on your environment is the most standard, you know, Java basic project. And when you do that, that means that in 3 years' time, when technology landscape changes, probably it will support Java. I mean, it's common enough for it to be supported. And while it will do that, then also our product will be supported. So instead of trying to be very smart about it and be, you know, reinvent the wheel, we just leverage what's there and we try to create for you, the end result, the thing that you deploy in your environment, the most standard and simple thing there is, exactly because of that maintainability issue that we know is an issue specifically for a large organization. And that goes to, you know, changing standards and compliance issues, but also for, you know, what happens with the next wave of innovation, the next wave of technology. So, you know, serverless functions is one way to, you know, to go, but who knows what tomorrow will bring. Probably whatever it brings, Java will support. So.
But that's not the only point, you know. After 2 or 3 years, another service comes into the place. How much are you looking into the future? Because you must anticipate where this company is going to, because otherwise you have then 10 very similar services, which are maybe just differing in 1 or 2 attributes. And it would be a mess if you create a service, 6 months later another one with 1 attribute more, 9 months later a second one with another attribute. So you must anticipate where this company is going to and what the plans are.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of our roadmap for the future, we try to intercept future trends, I would say. The most important input for us on our roadmap is actually what our customers are telling us, because as this platform, because the way I describe it, it's very easy for a customer to have, which has specific needs, to customize, to do their own thing on the field. We take that input and we take it very seriously. So things that, and I won't bore you with the details, but things like reactive designs, microservices choreography. It used to be called orchestration, now it's called choreography. I don't know what the difference is, but that's the way it's called now. But all of these kinds of things, we take them as input from our customers. So, I mean, we try to intercept the future, but we don't try to guess too much. We try to, it's all based on what our customers are telling us. And to be completely honest, what we found out is that eventually they will know more about our platform and how it can be used than we will ever be able to know. So, I mean, we take our cues from them.
Just one quick one, which is a little bit of a concern. You mentioned proliferation of APIs and a proliferation of, you said a small, relatively small development would be 150 to 200 APIs, and which would support, I guess, 150 to 200 microservices. What happens with when, and those are all sitting on your legacy system. So what happens when there's change management, new software releases, upgrades that you need to do on your legacy system? Would you need to take that into account, that there's this proliferation of APIs and microservices that also need to work in tandem with the upgrade that you're doing on your legacy?
So I love this question for a very simple reason. So if you take into consideration, current integration solutions, what would you do if you need to make changes on your legacy system? Probably you will need to make changes that will propagate throughout 5, 7 different products. Your messaging and your brokering and all of the ESB and all of those products. Here you don't have that problem. Of course, if you make a change on your legacy system, that change needs to be propagated. But how does it propagate? So how do you propagate changes in your code? If you have a code base, a Java code base, how do you make changes to that code base? Well, you have things like Git or other change management solutions, and you have your DevOps pipeline for testing and deploying. That is exactly the way we do it with OpenLegacy. And that's the power of that platform, because it's no different than any other code project that you would have. You already know how to do that. You have that muscle, as it were. You can just flex it with regards to your integration. So integration is not a separate, different domain. It's exactly the same as app development. And to answer your question more specifically, if you make huge changes on your legacy system, then yeah, you will need to make some changes on the integration stack. But these will be much easier to do and much more automated than any other solution you would have.
So you need to make changes across all your new APIs and all your new microsystems?
No, not exactly, because the thing that gets changed, and I don't want to get too technical here, but the thing that gets changed is that object that represents what's on the legacy side. That's the only thing that gets changed, if the legacy side changes. Everything else, the new business logic that you created on the microservice stays the same. So it just needs to be incorporated with that business logic. So at the end of the day, that change is stable, relatively. And the thing is that when you change a microservice, you don't have to re-examine everything in your layer. So basically, the problem is the real problem is testing the change that you made on the legacy side, not on that side. That side is, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it's a much easier change to propagate. But no, you would not need to do everything.
Will the client have to come back to you to help them?
No, absolutely not. They will be able to do it themselves, or using their implementer, but we of course will be more than happy to help if our help is needed. But clients are self-sufficient in that way.
Yeah, just want to make it clear for myself. Is it the same procedure if you ditch completely the legacy system and replace it with something else?
So, if you replace your legacy system with something something else, then most probably, not always, but most probably you would replace it with a new system that is already born on the cloud, microservice, and with APIs. In those cases, to be completely honest, and I'm not a sales guy, you don't need OpenLegacy. But if you are thinking about that migration, we do have some offerings regarding phase migration, which is taking that migration and doing it in a way that makes sense, meaning doing it piece by piece, kind of a change, not a rip and replace. There we can help. And also, if you're thinking about another way of moving from your legacy system, which is the coexistence between a new bank, that's quite common. So you have the new bank and you have the old bank, and you coexist between them. That's also where we have an offering. But if you already have a new system or a new core that you're happy about and is modern, you don't need OpenLegacy for that.
I want to add something that I think I also heard it here, and we are seeing it. And actually, it was good because when we were discussing, they're asking us, what do you see in the market? Is legacy, or again, legacy is an ever-moving target. SAP, Oracle, everything that gets customized and it's running in production, it's already legacy by definition. But the point being, let's say legacy is the usual suspect. Let's say it's the mainframe. So they ask is, what do you see in the market? We do get those questions. And the funny thing is, and we've been, each one of us 20 years in the market, at least I've been, and we have seen those days of kind of rip and replace that used to be maybe in the early years 2000 have kind of gone away. If we would see kind of a large phase of getting rid of the legacy in a rip and replace, then you would expect that today you will have those large transformative, we don't see that. Doesn't mean that they don't happen, but we don't see it. What we do see is more of a phase cloud migration. And some of our clients are actually doing that with us because as we heard here, no one has, no CIO, at least that I know, can wait 2 years, let alone 5 years, for their migration to happen, because they would need to freeze everything. So no innovation, no digital services, no competitive. So you need to get out there today, and that's exactly fits into where we are going. So you need those services now in an agile, standard, scalable. Yeah, we'll get you there.
Make
now
the elephant more agile.
Exactly. So if you want to do the phase, fine. Then all you need to do, and again, you would just need to replace that object, which is essentially a Java SDK that was generated for your backend automatically, and all the digital services that is already running, the microservices, the new business logic that should be in the open layer, it's already running for you. You don't need to touch it. So the phase migration becomes easier. It's never easy, and that's not us. That's typically on the clients or their partners to do that. But we have clients that specifically took our technology because of the phased cloud migration approach.
So hello. So I have a question regarding exactly that when you're starting to phase out the legacy. So one way of phasing out is, well, you replace functionality, but the other way is you actually move accounts from one system to another. But we'd like to do that without actually interrupting all our front-end applications. So would your OpenLegacy help with creating a single microservice, for example, that accesses both systems, depending on where an account lives? Or do you have to create two microservices and we need to build a logic on top of that to figure out which microservice to use?
Yeah, so absolutely. So that's also a very strong use case. So in just to repeat, I mean, it is quite common that you would have two systems working together alongside, and every update you would like to update both systems because they do coexist at the same time. And one of the a key challenge in that is keeping data integrity between the different systems. And again, without getting too much into the details, and if that's something that's interesting to you, I'll be happy to talk more about it, so come see me. But we do have ways of keeping data integrity between kind of those two systems. So yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, we would have a microservice, because a microservice should be a process, a miniature business process, or a piece of something that makes sense as a business process. And that business process should not, you should not worry about, do I enter new customer to both systems? You just worry about, enter new customer. And when you do that with a microservice that has, basically it has two SDKs going to those two systems, it keeps the integrity between them. So for all intents and purposes, you're just using that one microservice that does that one business functionality. Behind the scenes, what it does, it goes and talks with those two systems and keep the coexistence. And at some point, it's no longer relevant to keep the coexistence. Then you make the change and you just remove one of the SDKs and you remove that orchestration part. So absolutely, that's a valid use case and definitely something that we can do.
Daniel.
Hey, you see, Daniel's famous.
Yeah. My daughter's name is Daniel, so
Companies
it's a
moving into the
no-brainer.
Java space, they have very often not too much knowledge about the new technologies, so you will also have an educational task. Now, in how far non-functional requirements, like for example, adding load balancers, tools like APG or so, is part of your job, and yeah, on the other side, security, context propagation, PKI infrastructures, propagating certificates and things like that. It can be quite complex because the company maybe doesn't even know how they should implement that in the new world. How far are your services reaching there?
So I would say that with regards to things like security is a big concern, analytics, that's a big concern. So what we provide out of the box is kind of a very opinionated platform. So we provide out of the box, you will get all the cross-cutting concerns are baked into those microservices. So you will get the security. You will even get a little bit more than you would get with other solutions, because if you want your security provider at the end of the day to be your mainframe, you can do that. So you will have an OAuth authentication going back to the mainframe. But you would have all of those cross-cutting concerns, but it is an opinionated platform. It doesn't compel you. So if you, as a customer say, well, I already know how to do security. I don't need your, opinionated platform doing that. No problem. You don't have to do it. It's completely modular. But if you're saying, well, I'm kind of a new player in this game. I want best practices. those best practices are baked into the platform, and of course everything is customizable and very malleable.
And I will just add, we actually just had a European bank, I would put it this way, that really loved, kind of for us, it's a secondary benefit, which we don't never talk about, but they like the idea that our analytics can really go all the way. They said, we don't really know what's happening in the back end, we know what's in the front. With us, we kind of, you get all the way, because we know exactly what we invoked in the back end, how much time.
Exactly, yes. So we'll know the transaction spent this and this time on your legacy. Yeah.
Last question, if it's okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth, for being here and answering the questions, the really interesting questions. And I think we are much clearer than we were before and see the benefits of OpenLegacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.